Qapla, everyone. Microphone check, please. Anti-Trekker knows I'm streaming. It's okay. Qapla, everyone. Welcome to a special Sunday stream, Star Trek Picard, what we know so far. And this is going to be a little different than my usual stream. I'm not going to be reading every comment unless that comment is specifically at BirdoPrey5. I will, of course, read it. Of course, if it's a super chat, I will be obligated to read it. But I will skip through a few of the comments before we begin, because it's what I normally do, and I'm being told there's no sound. The comments, no sound. There's plenty of sound. There's sound. Sound is working. I don't know why. I don't know why that somebody told me it's not, but it clearly is. So Joseph Patrick was early as usual. Thomas Potts was first. Cinnabon says hello. Joseph Patrick comes back. Thomas Potts says, how dare you stream during Anti-Trekker? But no, Thomas. Anti-Trekker did. We were in contact via Skype. He knew. He tried to ask if I was streaming, but I was busy. And then I told him when I'd be streaming. He had plenty of notice, and I told him he need not end his stream today. It was perfectly fine that we both stream, because this is not, I intend to keep this stream up. Most of my live streams I take down. This is going to be about Star Trek Picard, so I do hope to keep this stream up for the long haul. So if people don't see it live, they can see it later. It's really not that big of a deal. Aberjam says, McClunky, welcome Aberjam. And people saying in 5x5, 25, so the microphone is working. Although not Ryan Johnson says he couldn't hear anything, which is weird. No, John Street, we're not running a Jaloja machine. Sci-Fi Nation says, greetings, Birdo Prey, Mamo Prey, Sazio Prey, and fellow nerds. Cinnabon Bunny is saying he can't hear anything, but I went to my microphone, I went to the audio feed. It's clearly, the audio is clearly there. Sci-Fi Nations is rather be here than Anti-Trekker whine about nothing worth paying attention anyhow. Oh, I should have read that before I read it out loud. Anti-Trekker is just, I don't know, I guess he's upset. He's upset, he needs to blow off some steam. Joseph says, by the way, it's Monday, you are late. I am sorry, Joseph, it is late for you. Yes, it is. And Cinnabon was muted from earlier. Okay, makes some sense. John Street's a Sci-Fi Nation that is an Anti-Trekker, that is a Kurogan cheap clone of Anti-Trekker, controlled by Birdo Prey 5. Livewood Maddox is Qapla, Birdo Prey and all, and Sci-Fi Nations is Birdo Prey. It was meant to be read. I get it. I get it. I get it. Anyway. So we're going to start. And I've got a few things I want to talk about. Star Trek Picard, because there was a new scene released today, but then they took it down. Now, I did not get a copy of it, but I have a copy of some other exclusives available only on CBS All Access, which I copied for fair use reasons, for review and criticism purposes. So I will show some of those. And I did see a copy of what they put up and took down, because JP over at Egotastic Fun Time did indeed get a copy of the clip they put up for just a few minutes before they took it down. He had already copied it, I guess, and I will talk to you about that clip. In fact, since somebody already brought it up, where was it? Cinnabon says Picard sounds terrible. In that scene, CBS leaked earlier and then pulled down. Yes. Well, I don't know. I mean, he's old. Let's face it. He's a 79, 80-year-old man playing a 95-year-old man. And to be honest, considering the year that it's, $24.99 or $23.99 or so, he sounds like he's 110. Considering we saw what Bones looked like at 100, I believe it was 137 or 100 and something in Encounter at Farpoint, the original TNG episode. Bones McCoy, Dr. McCoy, was still alive and quite old. Now Picard, listen, he's no spring chicken. Nobody. Lots of celebrities have seen the first 3 episodes in both Hollywood and the UK. I have some clips from a podcast that Sherrock Lofton, who is Jake Sisko, does. In fact, where is it? I put it here. Yeah. So we have a podcast. It's called the 7th Rule Podcast, and I do suggest people check out the 7th Rule channel on YouTube. Now I'm subscribed under my main username, but I'll subscribe under this one too. What the heck? They only have about 3,500 subscribers. Now this podcast, Sirach used to do with Aaron Eisenberg, the guy who played Nog. Unfortunately, in fact, this was, I guess, the original artwork. Unfortunately, after Nog passed away, after Aaron Eisenberg passed away, Sherrock brought in a couple other random people, and this guy does something with sci-fi. I don't know who this person is, to be honest. But they're not actors. They're not actors in Star Trek, unlike Aaron Eisenberg was. So he's got a couple other people to do the podcast with, continue the podcast. But we get actual Sherrock Lofton's, Jake Sisko's opinion of Star Trek Picard, because he was one of the people to see it. And I will tell you, it's not a great review. It's not a terrible review, but it is far from a great review. Now this was released recently on CBS All Access. This is a bit of an extended clip, so we'll get to that. We'll look at some of the newer and the older trailers, and then we also have introductions from all the different, I'm not sure about every single one, but most of the new crew members. So I do want to play their introductions, just so we know. Like, this is Rafi Musiker, who, from the comic, I recognize her, and this guy is Chris something, Spanish last name. He's the captain, but we'll get to that in a bit. And then there's some video. It was also there about.
No.
We got Patrick Stewart, Brent Spiner, Jerry Ryan, and whatever his face is, who plays you, the Borg. So these are them talking about what they missed from playing their original character. So all this adds up to, and plus we'll know what's going on with Picard. This is really the stuff you need to know or should know before watching the show. Now, if you were reading the comic books, you would probably know most of this stuff, but being that they've delayed the 3rd comic book until after the first episode, I feel like we need to know this anyway, that a lot of this stuff is stuff that we would have known had we gotten the third comic book on time. So here's the link for the Seventh Rule podcast that has Jake Sisko, Sherrock Lofton, and other people are all part of that podcast. So, let's see. Life with Matthews, Qapla and all. I think I've read that. Josh reaches Bird of Prey. You have a supervillain in Kuroga named Mothman. Sci-Fi Nation says he looks 95. He does. He looks 95. He's only 79, 80 years old. And Josh Street says, yes, Bones was 137 years old. I was pretty sure that's what he said. Sci-Fi Nation wants me to say Sherrock again. I believe it's Sherrock. Continuum Tracks is Bird of Prey. Aberjam says you love the D. Are you going to take that? If he means the Enterprise D, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Live with Matthews is Bird of Prey. Do you believe the comic was delayed because of a print error, or do you think they were concerned about kickback from something in it? Live with Matthew, I would bet money that it was delayed because of a change in the show. And again, this is theory. This is only my opinion. I have no way of confirming this. But when Michael Chabon was either kicked off of the show or resigned from the show, whatever you want to believe, he left Picard. And from what I've heard is that after he left Picard, Alex Kurtzman went in and kind of de-Chaboned as much of the series as he could. Now, I believe that Michael Chabon was someone who was actually looking to use the prime timeline Star Trek ships, the Enterprise D and, perhaps Miranda class and Excelsior class and maybe even Intrepids, starships we're familiar with. I believe Michael Chabon was more into that. And I believe Michael Chabon was more into the timeline that is more popular, 90s Trek timeline, if you will. And from what I've heard, that after Chabon left, Alex Kurtzman went in and stripped that all out because, every time you use a spaceship, while granted CBS has the rights to use it, they still have to pay royalties, from what I understand, to the creator of that starship. Now, it's not a ton of money, but that royalty is going to get paid out to somebody. And if you want to make money in Hollywood, you put in your own starships, so that royalty goes back to yourself, or in Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard's case, those royalties would get paid out to Secret Hideout, because the McGee class and that tug and those ships we saw, that shuttle, those were all created under Secret Hideout. So those royalties all come back to Secret Hideout. Whereas if they had used an Intrepid class or an Excelsior, those royalties would have been paid out to somebody else. Somebody else in Trek years ago. They would still be entitled to royalties for use of their ship. Now, I don't think we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it all adds up. And I think Kurtzman, well, again, this is rumor. I don't have any way of confirming it. Some of it's rumor, some of it is just logic. He cut out a lot of this stuff that he frankly didn't care about, and he preferred just seeing that money going to his own company. So, I believe that they had to redo part of the Picard comic, the third comic, because, this is just my personal opinion, Alex Kurtzman changed, not necessarily vital storylines, but ships being used and other background stuff so that they didn't have to pay so much out in license fees. That they were using their own license for just about everything in the show, like they do with Discovery. And because of that, they had to change some of the artwork in the comic book to better reflect the Picard series, or else it would have been ridiculously stupid. You know, like maybe the Enterprise E or F is in the series, but it's the Enterprise E in the comic book. And so now they have to change it to the Enterprise F in the comic book. And it's the Enterprise F isn't going to be an Odyssey class, it's going to be some class they make up. I'm just saying that as an example, and probably it's a bad example, because I honestly don't believe we're going to see the Enterprise in Picard, at least not in the first season. If we do, it's going to be at the very end of the first season, like we saw the Enterprise in Discovery. It's going to be the teaser for the second season. You're going to see the Enterprise E or F come at the end of the season and try to pick them up. But that's my opinion, Life with Matthew. And do I have any way of proving it? No. But you know what? In less than a week, we're all gonna know, and in less than 10 weeks, we're gonna know for sure everything that happened in first season. Rambling Canuck says, hello, Bird of Prey and all. Qapla Rambling Canuck. Aberjam says, can you turn the heat up? The prison cell is freezing. Aberjam, you are being held in Kurdistan. I hate to tell you. Springtime says, Bird of Prey. How's it going? It's going well, Springtime. And Thomas Potts puts in a link to, let's see, Picard. How to stream Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access. Well, I know how to stream Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access. But, yeah, let's put this article up. We'll see if there, I assume there's something in there you want to show off, Thomas.
Hey everybody, and welcome to...
Okay, that is the wrong URL. That is the podcast URL, and now what happened? Okay, let's try this again. Cut. There we go. Okay. Okay, how to stream Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access. A new chapter begins Thursday, January 23rd. And, okay, that's fine. A video's not supported. Sure it isn't. When Sir Patrick Stewart announced he would reprise his iconic role as Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Picard, an all-new original series with CBS All Access, the day of premiere seemed super eons away. Super eons away. Wow. Super eons. Yet, here we are over 18 months later, and the day we've all been waiting for, Thursday, January 23rd, at 12:01 a.m. Pacific time, is so close we can taste it. And I was worried about that. Because if it was coming out at 12:01 a.m. Eastern time, I would have been staying up to watch it. But at 12:01 a.m. Pacific time, which is what I was afraid of, because I realized that that CBS All Access shows do not drop at midnight time Eastern, because I've waited up past midnight and they never dropped. But they were dropped by the time I woke up at 6 a.m. So it only makes sense that they drop them at 12:01 a.m. Pacific time. Because, yeah, it would be so terrible if people in the Pacific got to see a show, 2.5 hours before it officially premiered, which is ridiculous. So that's basically 12:01 to 3 a.m. Eastern time. Oh, God, that's going to be terrible. I'm either going to have to go to bed really, really early Wednesday night to get up at 3 a.m. on Thursday, or I'll go to bed normal time and try to be up by 5 or 6 a.m. and watch it. And then I guess I will do a live review or something after watching the show. And I'll do a recorded review. Well, we'll see. I don't know. We're going to see how the show is, to be frank, what it deserves. But that's great to know that it's 12:01 Pacific time. I will not force myself to stay up. So what is Picard about? Blah, blah, blah. The cast, blah, 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 blah. How can I watch or stream? Yeah, you're going to say you need CBS. Now, if you have Amazon Prime, because you're outside the United States, it will be a day later. It's not going to be Thursday. It's going to be Friday that the show drops. So just be aware, Thursday, the 23rd, is only for CBS All Access in the U.S. Every place else, it's going to be Friday, a day later, to actually see it. Resolute Germ says, Bird of Prey, just wake up at 3 a.m. Springtime says, Bird of Prey, how about police departments going to respond to the premiere of Star Trek Picard? Do you think they can handle it? I think they'll be okay. I think most people who'll be watching Picard, even if they're angry, probably are not going to cause a lot of domestic disturbances. Thomas says, I sent to show the time. Thank you, Thomas. Greatly appreciated. And guys, if you just got here, just so you know, this is a little bit different than a normal stream because we're talking specifically about Star Trek Picard. I am not reading every chat. If you want me to read your chat, please do @BirdoPrey5, and I will read your chat. Otherwise, we're going to go on and talk about the show. Frodo Lone Wolfie, Qapla Frodo. Have you seen the footage that recently deleted online? Yes, it does. In fact, that's a great transition. So, as I was saying earlier, if you want to actually see this footage, check out JP at Egotastic Funtime, because he actually was able to capture the footage. And at the time, I didn't find anyone else on YouTube or anywhere who had the footage. But I will explain it to you. It's basically the car we saw in the trailer, Captain Picard playing cards with Commander Data. Now, what we see is that, number one, this is a dream, okay? Picard is playing cards with Data. It looks like it is in the mess hall of the Enterprise D. Perhaps, or I'd say 10 forward of the Enterprise D. Perhaps it's the Enterprise E. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it's hard to tell. It looked closer to the D, but you never know. But they were wearing their first contact uniforms. They're gray. They're movie uniforms. The uniforms that they had at the end of Deep Space Nine and in the movies. Which, to be honest, were my favorite uniforms. So both Data and Picard are wearing those uniforms. Picard is playing with Data, and Data flips over his cards, and they're playing poker, I believe, and Data shows he has 5 queens of hearts. 5 queens of hearts, which of course is an impossible hand to have, because there's only 1 queen of heart and only 4 queens in a deck. So this was a dream. Now, JP, God bless his soul, he looked at every microcosm of what that meant. He's like, the queen, it could mean the Borg queen. His heart, the heart could be because Picard has an artificial heart. And he went into all these like crazy things. And it's true. They really could have some meaning, but sometimes, I'm sure there's some meaning, but I honestly don't think the Borg Queen is really involved in the show. And I could be wrong, but we'll get into that. Anyway, at the end of that scene, we see Picard waking up. So we know it was a dream. And so this pretty much confirms to me, and I was already 90% sure, that every time we see Data in the Picard trailer, it is a dream. It's a dream, not a possibly some type of flashback, but it's definitely a dream. It is not a holodeck. Also, good news is that they made Data look a lot better than he did in the trailer. Because when we first saw Data in that trailer, he looked like an abomination. Now, he still doesn't look completely right, but it's a lot closer to what we remember, which makes sense because they probably had a lot more time to fix him in post-production. So that's some good news. I was happy to see the original, well, not the original, but the First Contact uniforms. However, this looks like it's going to be a very short scene, and I don't think we're going to see him beyond, much beyond. Later on, in another scene that we can talk about, Picard, in fact, this is it, but Picard tells Laris, who's the Romulan woman, that who I believe is living with him at his house, and her husband or boyfriend, whatever, her significant other, are also living at Picard's house. Now, they were Tal Shiar, but they also grew wine. They grew space wine at the Space Vineyard on Uyat Beta Colony in the Picard Countdown comics. So they've come to live with Picard at his vineyard in France since Romulus blew up. And so they're helping him with the winemaking. And it looks like they all live together in the vineyard. Picard, Laris, the guy's name, which I forgot offhand, and the dog, number 1. Anyway, Laris asked Picard at one point, she says, I heard you talking in your sleep a lot. Were you having bad dreams again? And Picard says, the dreams are wonderful. It's the waking up that's scary to him. Which is very, sad and depressing that he's actually enjoying his dreams, presumably with Data, more than the waking up, the waking world, which, that kind of tugged at my emotional string just a little bit. So Aberjam says, Bird of Prey, would you prefer to get the D or would you take the E instead? Well, of course I'd take the E instead. I mean, I listen, the Enterprise D was on TV for 7 years. Okay? Every week for 7 years, I saw the Enterprise D go to strange new worlds and whatever. I'm gonna feel something about the D. The E I saw in what? Three movies? And not even all that much in the course of the 3 movies. So, as much as I like the E is clearly a superior ship. The sheer answer is the D got 100 times as much screen time as the E did. So it means more. And I think that's exactly why in one of the trailers, which we'll see probably, there was a giant hologram of the D above, which is, I believe it's Starfleet, but it is not San Francisco. I believe it might be Miami or somewhere else. We have, I think, some other Starfleet. Maybe they've got in San Diego, Los Angeles, but this is not San Francisco, and I will explain why. Sci-Fi says, Bird of Prey, Brent Spiner is no spring chicken either. Besides gaining weight, the camera adds pounds as well. Yeah, but, and I'll show you in one of these videos, Brent Spiner looks a lot better at his age than Picard does. And if Data was going to be back in the show, which he is not, and I am 100% sure, Brent Spiner confirmed he is not coming back as Data. He would not do anything that would have retconned Data's death. So Brent Spiner is in this show only as a dream sequence, which is something he can live with because it doesn't mean Data doesn't die. He was very clear. Data died at Nemesis, and he's not going to do anything to change that. But if Brent Spiner was coming back as a permanent or semi-permanent character, they would be much better off just putting him on and making him look, putting makeup on him, but not trying to hide his age. And they can just say, well, Data added an aging program to his, to his skin, to his exterior, and they would solve any problems they had with Data looking old. And that's really not that difficult a thing to do, and to be completely believable, because Data always wanted to be human anyway. Springtime is Bird of Prey. If they bring back Data, will they kill him off again? They're not bringing back Data. I am very confident I can say they're not bringing him back. They're not killing him off. He's never really there. He's just a dream sequence.
Well, what if he was dead?
He was dead. We saw him blow up.
What if he did?
But he did. Frodo Lone Wolfie says, Bird of Prey. Archer should team up with Picard to fix the temporal Cold War, which would explain STD away, but we can dream. I hope this is loyal to canon. I hope so too, but to be honest, the way Jake Sisko's the actor who plays Jake Sisko, and these other people they were purposely not doing spoilers, and they were walking around the issue over how good it was. And even though this guy up here, whoever he is a total tool, he says, oh yes, get CBS All Access, you'll love it, and the more we pay for Star Trek, the more Star Trek they'll make. I can say with complete honesty that Sherrock Lofton is not the tool that this guy is. He flat out said that this Star Trek was missing something, that it was not the good Star Trek that we remember from the 90s, and that in all likelihood that Star Trek is dead. That this is not going to be Next Generation. This is not going to be Deep Space Nine. This is not going to be Voyager type Trek. This is a different animal, and it's frankly, he prefers the old stuff. And this lady, she was being very generous, where she said she doesn't know if people are going to like it. She doesn't know if even she's going to like it. She was giving it an 80% chance of her liking it based on the first 3 episodes, but when you hear her actually speak about it, it seemed like she was giving it a 20% chance, and that was an 80% chance she wouldn't like it. So I think they were all doing their best to try to remain positive so that they could keep getting invited to future... Right, because there's going to be 3-4 more Star Trek premieres coming out in the next couple of years, and if you want to get an invite to the next premiere of the next big Star Trek series, you better not go on YouTube and trash Picard, because they're not going to invite you back. Even I know that. If I was invited to Star Trek Picard premiere, I probably wouldn't be saying anything until the series came out, because if I said something, I'd be like, well, and I'm never going to be able to come back, or I'd have to go post under an anonymous name or something. So, they know that if they say anything too bad, they won't be invited back. So you've got to figure that into what they're talking, when they start talking. And you guys should watch it. I put the link in earlier. You guys should watch this yourself, so you understand what I'm saying as to what they're actually, how they approach it, and how it's like they're stepping on eggshells to not say anything too terrible about the show. John DeMarco says, Bird of Prey, it's sad that since Kurtzman and company have violated canon so badly, something simple like a correct uniform is a big deal. It is. It is. I mean, it would have been a given, right? Had it been Stephen Ira Bear. In fact, Chirac said that he wishes Stephen Ira Bear got a chance of doing another Star Trek show, but it probably will never happen, even if Alex Kurtzman had to be his boss. But if it was Stephen Ira Bear, there's no question they would be wearing the correct uniform for the day. But under Alex Kurtzman, we don't know, because they should be wearing the correct uniform for the day in Discovery. But they never do. They never do. Even when they meet the Enterprise, they're still not wearing the correct uniforms for the Enterprise. It's close, but it's not the right one. Abajam says, conferred, Bird of Prey would rather take the E than get the D. Can't blame him, to be honest. Wow, indeed. Yeah, Sister of Prey said the same thing. Jeff Franklin says, Bird of Prey, yes, son of a bitch. Anti-Trigger says it. Get high. He says hi. Oh, well, welcome. Hello, Anti-Tracker, if you can hear this. Rambling Canucks is Bird of Prey for aging data. There's already precedent for an aging program within Data. Yeah, Data Maker's wife in TNG. Yeah, the Soon created a wife who could age, so it is possible. Thomas's Anti-Tracker says he loves you. Oh, now it's gonna sound awkward. Awkward. Springtime is Bird of Prey. Will maybe dream will die for Picard, and it will be a very traumatic event for Picard, as he clearly did miss his data in a massive event in our Star Trek Picard. Yeah, okay, so, according to Alex Kurtzman, and let's get the right screen up. According to Alex Kurtzman, let's go to this New York Times article. Alex Kurtzman says, if you feel each piece is handcrafted with care, then I think people will really appreciate it, said Alex Kurtzman, an executive producer of many of the new Star Trek series. If you feel like a universe is being shoved down your throat for speed and dollars, there's no faster way to lose an audience. Which is exactly right. But why does it feel like Star Trek Discovery is being slammed down my throat for speed and dollars? And to be honest, Star Trek Picard seems like it is too. Because of the short track and everything else, we're not seeing the stuff we know, the stuff we want to see. You are trying to lose an audience. So he says the right words. He knows what to say, but he doesn't act correct. He doesn't live by what he says. Anyway, so here's the picture. This is the brains behind Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. We got Kurtzman in front and center, Akiva Goldsman on the left, Michael Chabon on the right, and he's gone. I mean, he's just there for the picture, but he's already gone from the show. And we have Heather Caden in standing. So these are the brains behind Discovery and Picard. So these are the people that take the blame if it goes bad. But if it goes well, then we should praise them. Although I don't think that's going to be it. And there's, of course, Sonequa Martin Green, because they talk about Discovery in here. They're showing off what real Star Trek was compared to this. And they talked about how Kurtzman says there's been absolutely no talk with the movie people about any type of connection between doing a movie and the TV shows, even though the latest word is that the fourth movie is off again. During the writing of this article, which was only 2 days old, they still were under the impression that the fourth movie is in the works. Although Midnight's Edge, I believe, told us that is simply not true. And it says, not even the makers of Star Trek know exactly what the future holds. Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. There's not been any real conversation. Okay, so Alex Kurtzman, so let's get his picture up here. Alex Kurtzman believes, and he said this in an interview, he says that when you think of Picard, before Star Trek Picard ever started, when you think of Picard, he says the two things you think of first are Data and the Borg. Now, I would totally disagree with that. If I think of Captain Picard before Star Trek Picard came out, I don't think Data and the Borg would be the first things I thought of. I would say the Enterprise and Beverly, his whole life in that episode, Inner Light, his help of Spock with the Romulans, he did mind meld with Sarek. There's a lot of stuff. The Borg, yes, the Borg were the big villain and the big bad guy, but he fought them twice. He fought them twice, really. It wasn't Q. I would say Q had a bigger impact on Picard's life than the Borg. Q was there at the beginning, in Encounter at Farpoint, and at the end in All Good Things, and like 5 other episodes in between. Q would be one of the first things I think about when you tell me Picard. Not Data. Yes, Data did a very noble sacrifice at the end at Nemesis to save Picard's life. But to be frank, a lot of people have sacrificed themselves over the years for Picard and for the Enterprise, and probably for the Stargazer, and I doubt Picard is having dreams about all of those people. And for the dreams, okay, so the mass problem, yeah. So here's the deal. What we've heard. Oh, and Anti-Tracker is now streaming as Rational Roundtable, which he is no doubt going to probably put the audio portion of this in his stream. So if anybody wants to watch Anti-Tracker stream, you should go over there. I will be right back. I'm going to put on a commercial. I'll be right back.
The Jordan Marsh Super Sale is on.
Super!
This is the place for spectacular store-wide savings.
Super!
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday only. Save 25 to 50% on selected fashions, accessories, housewares, and more.
Super!
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 days of sizzling savings of 25 to 50%. The Super Sale at Jordan Marsh is on.
This is the place, Jordan Marsh.
One Day at a Time has moved. The craziest cast of characters in some of their zaniest adventures ever. Now come to you in the morning at a brand new time. Anything goes, and it usually does. So be sure to watch us, because it all happens one day at a time. Now at 10 Eastern, 9 Central and Pacific.
There really is a Kentucky Fried Chicken school.
Yep, today we're making the Colonel's original recipe.
What have you learned?
Fresh chicken makes the best chicken.
And that we use 11 herbs and spices.
Oh, but that's the Colonel's secret. And special pressure cooking.
So it's always tender and juicy.
Looks like you've learned to make great chicken.
Only way to serve our customers right.
It's so nice to feel so good about a meal, so good about Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Wow, Kentucky Fried Chicken the right way. Okay, so here's the deal with, and this might be a spoiler, so it's a minor spoiler though. What happens, and we can tell this between the comic book and the short track, and what we've heard from the various people who have seen the first 3 episodes of Picard. So, in the comic book, Geordi LaForge is at Utopia Planitia, and he is saying that the first wave of ships, the Utopia Planitia is working full-time, 24/7, on making a bunch of ships to evacuate the Romulans, because they have an entire empire to evacuate. It's not a single planet. It's dozens, maybe hundreds of worlds that need evacuation. So Utopia Planitia is apparently working on I would assume it's an entirely new class of starship that is just designed for refugee travel. And the first group of these ships is just about ready to leave when Picard calls Geordi. But they were planning on making a hell of a lot more. This was just going to be the first batch. And then in the Countdown comic, Picard goes to an outlying world outside on the Romulan border zone called Uyat Beta. And there he gets taken hostage by the Romulan governor, because while he's there, he finds out that there's another sentient species on the planet, a species native to the planet, the Uyatis, obviously, because it's Uyat Beta. And the Romulans had no plans on saving them. There's about 10,000 Romulans on the planet, and I guess the ship they sent to get them, the Verity, which is looks to be an Odyssey-class starship that's almost identical to the Odyssey-class ships in Star Trek Online. I don't know if they're supposed to be able to hold 10,000 people or what, but they are supposed to evacuate the 10,000 Romulans. They had no idea that there's another 5 million native Uyatis on the planet. And the Romulan governor said, well, you're not here to evacuate them. You're only here to evacuate us. And Picard raised a big moral stink about he wasn't evacuating anyone until he was able to find out what the deal was with the natives. And then she's like, well, you know what? Now you're under arrest, and we're just going to take your ship. So at the end of the second comic book, the Romulans have taken control of the Verity, which was Picard's ship, and I assume they were about to start beaming up their 10,000 colonists. Now, what was going down on the planet was that Laris, who's the Romulan woman, and her boyfriend, who were the vineyard keepers on Uyat Beta, they had natives working the land, which we first thought of they were possibly slave labor. But in the second comic book, we find out that the Uyatis are actually fairly advanced. They have a lot of weird technology. Probably the planet has some weird things going on. Like the Uyati live inside a mountain where there are upside down waterfalls. And the two Romulans who became friendly with Picard at the vineyard over there, it turns out they were Tal Shiar members. But they're undercover Tal Shiar, so nobody knew they were Tal Shiar. And they fell in love. It was their first assignment together, and they fell in love while they were there, so they can't tell anyone they're in love or they'd be kicked out of the Tal Shiar. But they also couldn't let these natives be killed. So with the natives, I don't know if they armed the natives or what, but they got the natives to take Picard, to save Picard. They attacked the Romulan the Romulan governor's compound, and they freed Picard and his first officer. So at the end of the book 2 of the comic book, Picard, Rafi Musiker, who's first officer, Laris and her boyfriend, and a bunch of the native Uyatis are on the planet's surface, but they have no way of getting to the ship. And on the ship is the Romulan governor and some of her aides, and she's got the first, well, okay. It's actually, so Admiral Picard was the guy in charge of the ship. There was no captain. So Admiral Picard and his first officer, Rafi Musiker, both beamed down to the surface. So I guess it's a second officer who's left in charge, a random commander, and he was already taken prisoner by the Romulans because somehow the Romulans had gotten the what I assume are the command codes for the Verity, because as soon as they beamed on and they were given access to a computer, they immediately were able to take control of the ship. So they got the command code somehow. I suspect Section 31 gave them the command codes. I have no way of knowing it, but that's all. But that's just a suspicion. Anyway, I believe they did it because I don't think Section 31 wants the Federation to save all the Romulans. I think that they realize it's better off if the Romulans mostly die. It's probably safer for the Federation, and the one way to do that is to cause the Romulans to, if the Romulans killed Picard, that would probably really slow down, if not completely cancel, the entire effort of saving them. And the Romulans are not, you would think the Romulans are begging the Federation for help, but they're not. The Romulans are being real assholes. They don't trust the Federation. They're being very, very paranoid. They don't let the Federation scan their planet. They don't let the Federation scan their space. The Federation can make contact, but the different governors make the Federation wait hours for responses. They're just being real assholes, even though the Federation's trying to save their asses. They really, a lot of Romulans don't believe the Federation is actually doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And they think the Federation is trying to destroy Romulus, which I suspect Section 31 really is trying to do in the background, but Picard doesn't know this yet. Anyway, the thing that makes Picard get very upset and leave Starfleet isn't the fact that he was taken prisoner by the Romulans. It's the fact that the synthetic life forms, who were, I believe, a direct copy of Data, or that the Federation used B4, and I believe it was B4 who was in the draw. It definitely wasn't Data in that draw. I believe it was B4, and there's a lot of Federation cyberneticists, over a decade before Picard started, that were working on duplicating Datas, and they did. And they made a ton of synthetic life forms. And anyway, these synthetic life forms attacked Mars while the Romulan fleet was being built. The Romulan rescue fleet was being built. Now, from what people who have seen the first 3 episodes have said, is that the synthetics, and we saw the attack in Children of Mars short track, is that but we didn't know what the date was of when they were exactly attacking, what year. So apparently the synthetics attacked Mars before the Romulan fleet was completed. So the bulk of the Romulan fleet was never created. So the Federation could not save the vast majority of Romulans. Now, there are still thousands of starships out there, and I suspect that perhaps the very first batch, because Geordi LaForge did say the first batch was just about ready to leave at the beginning of the comic book, that first batch probably made it off the planet. But the second, third, and fourth batches, however many more batches there were going to be, were probably the batches that were destroyed when the synthetics attacked Mars. Now, nobody has said this, but it is very, very possible Geordi LaForge is dead, because Geordi LaForge was stationed on Utopia Planitia, according to the comic book, and according to what people who have seen the first 3 episodes have told us. This takes place while the fleet was being built. So this attack by the synthetics is either happens in the third comic book, the third countdown comic book, which is this one. This was supposed to be released on the 15th. This was supposed to be released 4 days ago, but it got delayed. And now it's not going to be released until after Star Trek Picard premieres. So I think this one would have given us some of the answers, but because I believe they had to go back and edit it because of last-minute changes made to the show by Alex Kurtzman, we now won't get this issue until after Star Trek Picard actually premieres, which is a total waste and ridiculous, a waste of our time and money. Like, I feel cheated. Like, I bought the first 2 comics that this was a prequel to Picard, and knowing how these 3 comics ended was supposed to help me know something more about Star Trek Picard before it begins. And instead, due to their poor planning, now I'm not going to get the 3rd one until after Picard already begins. So I'm kind of pissed about that, to be blunt. But I think we would have found out in this 3rd comic that the attack happens in this 3rd comic book. So I think, and I don't know if we're going to find out in Picard in the first couple of episodes, or if we're going to find out in the comic book, but the fate of Geordi LaForge is going to have to be discussed. I suspect most likely he is dead. I mean, we saw the brutal attack that the synths were doing on Mars in the short trek. We see the brutalness of the attack in flashbacks in various Picard trailers. I mean, it was total devastation to Mars, the shipyards, the planet's surface, everything. It's all gone. It's all destroyed. So how anybody could survive it would be a miracle. I mean, Geordi would have had to have been taking a vacation or something that day. And he would have to say, oh, well, it's a good thing I went to Earth to check on my wife or something that day. That would be the only way for him to get out of it. But, so I think we're going to really find out. And I suspect, if they're not being cowards about it, that Geordi is probably dead. Which I don't like, but I think that's the reality of the situation. So let's look at this. This is a clip available on CBS All Access. I can't find it on YouTube. So the only place you're going to see it is if somebody has CBS All Access and is willing to show parts of it, to the best of my knowledge. So here, Patrick Stewart is talking a little bit about the beginning of the show. Now I'm going to have to pause it and stop it regularly so as not to run afoul of copyright bots, but we'll see what's going on. I'll explain along the way.
Star Trek Picard. It's not Next Generation.
He says, yeah, it is not Next Generation.
Almost 20 years had passed. Things have become more complex. The world of Starfleet, the world of the Federation, is not quite what it was the last time Jean-Luc Picard was seen in that world.
So, basically admitting the world of Starfleet, the world of Jean-Luc Picard, it's not the same. The Federation, it's all different. It's been 20 years since all this happened.
It's different.
It's different.
Not all good.
And it's not good. It's not all good. And to be honest, that exactly fits with what he said in the Variety article and other articles, where he flat out said that this entire series is a response to the world of Brexit and President Trump, because he is very much against Brexit and very much against Donald Trump, and he feels that those are against the Federation's beliefs, and he felt like he needed to do something. He needed to do a show that had a message, and we will see that message very soon. So a new chapter begins, and we get his vineyard. We don't need the sound at this point. They're coming up on his vineyard, which is a beautiful vineyard, but let's skip along. Okay, well, now we got Kurtzman And Kurtzman's talking about how everything's the same but different.
Homage to and respecting what came before, but doing something entirely different.
Yeah, and we're gonna pay homage to everything that came before, but we're gonna do something entirely different. Every time Alex Kurtzman speaks, he says one thing, and in the very next sentence, he negates what he said in the sentence before. Now, I've seen this throughout 4 or 5 different articles, 3 or 4 different interviews. Every time this man speaks, he says something, and in the very next sentence, negates what he said at the beginning. It's almost like an art form he has down. Which is, his lines sound pretty good, but he's his own worst enemy. It's ridiculous.
Our mission was really to figure out how to
we get
build
to
a
see
show
number
that
one
did honor Next
running
Gen and many other Trek shows, but that really had its own unique identity.
Lars heard.
Okay, so this is obviously Picard, Jean-Luc Picard, obviously Patrick Stewart. Now, this is why I think Laris, and again, I really forget his name, Zima or something, his Romulan name, but they're all living on his vineyard at this point. And at the very beginning of the Picard Countdown comic, we see Laris and the guy coming to Picard's vineyard. So I think that the beginning of the Countdown comic, which takes like, and then they say a year prior, they go a year back in time, and that's when we find out Picard gets taken by the Romulans. But a year after that, these guys come. So I believe they've been at his vineyard now for 8 or 9 years. I believe that's just their life is living out at Picard's vineyard, and they seem to be getting along almost as a family.
Heard you talking in your sleep last night.
So yeah, they heard him talking in his sleep last night. She says, bad dreams.
The dreams are lovely. It's the waking up that I'm beginning to resent.
It was important to...
The dreams are lovely. It's the waking up he's beginning to resent. And I gotta be honest, I felt kind of bad for him there. Because, you know, you get to a certain age, and I think that happens. It's not something you want to think about. But this is a Romulan now. This is a Romulan woman now. And I don't have a problem that the Romulan woman looks 100% human other than her ears. And maybe her eyebrows are a little weird. But her facial structure, her body, it's 100% human. I don't have a problem with it. However, at the end of Nemesis, this is what a Romulan woman looked like. Okay? This is a clip from Nemesis. This is a Romulan woman in Nemesis. Okay? And that's a Romulan dude. And of course, in Deep Space Nine, we know this line. Oh, well. Let's go back. It's a fake! Yes, so this... It's a fake! That is what a Romulan looked like in Deep Space Nine. And in Picard, they're basically humans with pointy ears.
The dreams are lovely.
I don't mind it, but it's noticeable. And here's the guy.
Earl Grey, decaf.
Okay, so that's a replicator. He said tea, Earl Grey, decaf. So you see, it's like it was because he says tea, Earl Grey, but it's different because he says decaf now. And we get a completely new replicator, which looks a lot more like the replicator, and I say replicator, that was on Star Trek Discovery, even though there should not have been replicators on Star Trek Discovery. But it's got this...
Earl Grey.
It's got this blue laser 3D printing thing instead of the, materializing replicators that we saw in the Next Generation. Again, Do I care that the replicator has changed? Not really. I mean, yeah, it looks cooler. And sure, they could have new replicator technology. But it's one of those many chances that they are passing to make something that we want to, that once looks familiar to us. Nothing in this show is really looking familiar to us. And if you want to keep your fans happy, you got to throw them a bone. You got to throw them some type of bone.
We do with this character, it's 20 years later, to really focus on.
And yeah, so Heather Caden, she was the woman who was standing. She's an executive producer.
Going through, and kind of that was the jumping off point.
After so long, sometimes I worry you've forgotten what you did.
Okay.
Who you are.
Lars,
We have not.
Okay, well, that's Laris's boyfriend. So again, that's a Romulan guy in Star Trek Picard. And this was a Romulan guy in Star Trek Discovery. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, excuse me. Oh my god, I can't believe I said Discovery. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So it's a little bit different. It takes some getting used to. But for this past scene where Laris says, sometimes we think you forgot who you are, but we haven't. What she is talking about is that Picard saved thousands and thousands of Romulans, even after they were dicks to him, even after they were assholes to him. He saved thousands, including her and her boyfriend or her husband, whatever. For all I know, they're married, but they're not officially married because they were Tal Shiar. So say her and her boyfriend were one of the many, many, many Romulans saved by Picard. So they're the ones that say, we have not forgot what you did. Because in the Countdown comic, Laris specifically says they owe their life to Picard. They can't, apparently, because of politics in the Federation, what I'm getting is that Romulans have become the illegals of the 24th century. They have the Federation isn't making them easy to live. They're not making it easy for them to, get jobs or whatever. They're not making it easy for them to assimilate into the culture. So the fact that these guys, this woman and this guy had literally nowhere else to go, they came to Picard and they basically, I don't want to say they're his slaves, but they've dedicated their life to him because they had nowhere else to go. And they figured they owed Picard. So they are giving their time to Picard. And I believe that's why they're working on the vineyard for him. And they've probably had a better life than most Romulans the last 10 years.
Character with arguably the greatest single captain and actor.
Arguably the greatest single Star Trek captain. Now, you know what, Akiva? I won't fight you. You are absolutely correct. He is arguably the greatest captain. I would argue he's not the greatest, but it's arguable, okay? It is arguable. There are a lot of people who will say Picard is the best captain.
Was really a delightful opportunity. I mean,
so anyway, let's see. We want to. Okay, so here we got Picard talking to the dog.
Who said that, number one? What is that, number one? Who said that no legacy as rich as honesty?
There is no legacy as rich as honesty. And honestly, I was going to look this up. There is no legacy as rich as honesty. Because I was curious if that is a real quote that somebody said. Oh, a Shakespearean play, of course. Of course. I don't know which it is. The quotation is from the play All's Well That Ends Well, Act 3, Scene 3. Okay. Well, it makes sense that, a Shakespeare fan and a Shakespearean actor, he would know such a line.
Who said that, number one?
Oh, of course. Listen, whatever we're going to say about Star Trek Picard, the dog is adorable.
Fascinating about playing this role now is that I can bring...
Okay, so this is something I want to talk about. Now, I know people have talked about this before, but this is by far the best shot we get of this fancy new transporter system.
My aging, my experience.
Look at how these people just walk through this door, this transporter door, and like they're zapped off to wherever they're going and wherever they're coming from, almost like people use an escalator today. It's just another form of mass transit. Nobody is shocked by going through it. They just walk through it and they're where they are. Now, a lot of people have asked, well, how do you know where to send you? You know, nobody's saying, send me to, you know, Starfleet Academy. Send me to the moon, right? Nobody's saying where they're going. Presumably, they all are going to and coming from different places. I would say that if somebody's carrying the modern equivalent of a cell phone, whatever their equivalent is, whether it's their communicator badge or a tricord or something on them that's electronic. It could even be, for all we know, it could be a piece of technology that's under their skin. They could just have simply programmed it to tell, almost like you set a waypoint on Google Maps. And you put in your destination, and as soon as you go through this metal gate, it reads what your destination is and it sends you there. So I honestly don't have a problem with this technology. It's actually, I'm going to say, it's a pretty ingenious way of doing the transporter as a mass transit system. And I know Anti-Trekker was saying that, oh, why didn't we have this in the short track? Why were they using, shuttles as school buses if they had this technology? While that is a fair question, the honest answer is, at this point in the show, we are at least 10 years post the short track. So it is quite possible. I mean, we know this technology was not in use 20 plus years ago. We never saw it in use. So this technology, I would say, is relatively new. So it's perfectly honest, it's perfectly logical that it simply wasn't available at the time the short trek was made. Either it hadn't been invented yet at all, or if it had been invented, it was still being tested. Now, I'd imagine that Starfleet probably gets this new technology before most other people in the Federation. So they could still be beta testing it for all we know. I mean, before you start letting your kids go through it, you can have a ton of Starfleet officers use it just to prove its worth. Now, here's the thing. It looks like everybody has been saying
to infiltrate the character.
Everybody has been saying that Picard has come to San Francisco and that this is Starfleet headquarters. But these are palm trees. There are no palm trees in San Francisco. And if somebody tells me, well, there's palm trees in 2399 because of global warming, I can't accept that. Okay, I'll be honest. There are some things I can accept. I cannot accept that there are palm trees in San Francisco in 2399. It makes no sense. There's weather grids. There's weather, they have control of the weather of the planet. There's not going to be palm trees in San Francisco. So I think this is, either Miami or Southern California. If this was San Diego, Los Angeles, or Florida somewhere, then yeah, you could have these palm trees. I don't think that if it is Starfleet headquarters, then perhaps Starfleet headquarters has moved, and it wouldn't be impossible for Starfleet headquarters to move after the Dominion War. There had to be a lot of rebuilding. There had to be a lot of, new projects. So maybe they decided, hey, let's not keep Starfleet headquarters and Starfleet Academy next to each other. Maybe that's too big of a target. Maybe we'll spread out. So that's just my opinion.
It's the story of
But
Picard.
I don't
It is
believe.
The title. It is his actual take.
I don't
She's not
believe that's
backseat.
Sorry for the echo. Okay, so now we get a great shot of the Enterprise D, and this is the only time in all of the trailers, in all of the short tracks, in all of the leaked footage coming from the show, that we see anything resembling in a prime timeline, a main timeline Star Trek ship. And I suspect this is here solely because Michael Chabon was already on the show. It's already been shown, and it was too late to be edited out. So I think it's probably going to be kept in the show. But I think had this not been shown, this is the type of thing that Alex Kurtzman was removing and replacing with their licensed materials.
Story of this man and this chapter of his life.
But it is a beautiful shot of the Enterprise D. Now, I gotta be honest, I'm wondering why is the Enterprise D so special that it's the one hologram that happens to be showing above what I assume to be Starfleet headquarters. I mean, the Enterprise D would have been destroyed, 15 plus years ago? Maybe over 20 years ago. Excuse me, over 20 years ago. Did the Enterprise E, did it not have a long and a distinguished career? But I love the fact that the Enterprise D is there. Sci-Fi Nation says, read your comment. Okay, Sci-Fi Nation. We'll read some comments. That's true. I do apologize. I have been neglecting the comments. Let's see. Sci-Fi Nation says, Bird of Prey, your slideshow isn't keeping up with your narration. Well, it's not a slideshow. It's just me trying to manually click through. Ozzy NF, welcome Ozzy. I think Anti-Trigger downvoted you. What a dick. Well, it happens. It happens. Frodo says, Bird of Prey, maybe B4 was disassembled because of the android attack. Then again, I'm sure they base their designs on B4, so who knows? Yeah, very, very true. Well, let's put B4 looked like he had scorch marks on him. So maybe he had to take a phaser or two to be disassembled. Or maybe, I suspect what's more logical is that B4 was never able to keep up with Data's programming. And like B4 just kind of failed after, a few days or a few weeks after we last saw him in Nemesis. B4 just shut down because he could not take all of Data's memories. He just wasn't designed for it. Stress-free says LaForge can die a hero's death. He very well might. He very well might. Dan23 says, so I heard ages ago the last comic was going to come out after the first episode. Yes. Well, here's the deal. The comic was originally scheduled to come out in late January because Picard was originally scheduled to be premiere in February. But then they moved the premiere date of Picard up to January. So then, although they didn't do it immediately, they did move the Picard countdown comic date to before the premiere. But then, because of reasons, they had to again change the countdown comic release date now to after the premiere. Now, there was only several thousand of these copies sold, according to Nerdrotic, who has the links to look at the lists of how much each comic sells. So it's not that they needed to print 100,000 of these. Okay, I think there was literally less than 6,000 issues of issue 1 sold. So there's going to be even less of issue 2 and issue 3. So it's not that this is going to be a tremendous run of comics that they need, weeks to get it done. I'm sure they can run these, whatever they need, 5,000 initial copies. Probably they run that in over one night. And it's not a big deal. So the only thing that the problem is they must not have the content to run it, which is, I suspect, because they need to redraw big parts of the comic, or even little parts. If they have to redraw, a few cells of the comic, they have to, they can't print it. So it's delaying when they could print it and delaying the entire thing. And frankly, I think it means they really just don't care about the people who did put their money and time into reading the comic, because they're not trying to get it out on time. Sci-Fi Nation's Bird of Prey, Trek, indeed, all entertainment media should be just that, entertainment, not message about what we hear about every day to begin with. I agree. Welcome, Chief Cook. Trek 95's Bird of Prey. How can you tell if Alex Kurtzman is lying? His lips are moving. Yes, well, like a politician. Sci-Fi Nation says that's a TOS Romulan, a nice homage. Yeah, well, I will agree. The original series Romulans looked a lot more like humans. That's why it's one of the reasons I'm not totally upset. John DeMarco's Bird of Prey, Picard was dreaming of the TNG era, and he wakes up in the Kurtzman era. I'd be resentful too. You know what? That is a great line. Yeah. I didn't mind the dreaming. It's waking up that's upsetting me. Frodo's Bird of Prey, I think it's going to be more of a visual reboot with the odd nod to canon, just like STD, except not so blatant maybe. Well, the people who saw it, and mostly going by that podcast, the Seventh Rule podcast, they did say it was better than Discovery. But yeah, I would agree. It's going to be a visual reboot with a very odd nod to canon. In fact, I would say there was probably a lot more nods to canon before Shaban got either resigned or fired. And I think they took out a lot of those nods. We'll see. We're going to see. Mary, welcome Mary, says they cloned Picard once. That's true. The Romulans did have a clone of Picard. Oh, which is after this, I'm going to talk about the girl, Doll. Actually, what we'll do is we'll go through all the characters, and then I'll talk about why Doll is special. Sci-Fi Nation says, Bird of Prey, you can't appreciate Shakespeare until you've heard it in the original Klingon. Yes. General Chang. Yes. Star Trek 6. And I bought, and somewhere in this house is my first edition of Shakespeare, of Hamlet, restored to the original Klingon by the Klingon Language Institute. I bought it in like the mid-90s or something. It was one of the first things I ever bought online. It was like a website that like a 12-year-old could make today. Probably worse. It just, send your money and they mailed it to you. Sci-Fi Nation's A Bird of Prey, they had a personal transporter Nemesis. Yes, Data slapped it on Picard. They did. That experimental personal transporter. It was the size of like a silver dollar. And most interesting part about it was that it transported itself. You did not need a ship's transporter to use it. I don't know how it could possibly work. Like, honestly, it's an impossible device. But the device actually transported itself as part of the transport process. It's one of those things you don't want to think too much about, because it really doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. Could it be Starfleet Academy? Well, it could be, but Starfleet Academy is also in San Francisco. I just don't think this is San Francisco. Yeah, LA or Florida would be my guess, Mary. Rambling Canucks is Bird of Prey. CBS watches your channel. Confirm those transporters look like your mass transit and city skylines. That's true. They look like the Stargate transporter system and city skylines that we used. Sci-Fi Nation Bird of Prey, Earth has had weather grids since TOS movies. It's at least possible. Well, yes, but they wouldn't be changing the weather so that they could have, that would be crazy if they were purposely changing the weather so that they could have palm trees in San Francisco. They would be looking to keep the original climate. Alexander says, Bird of Prey, I was in Stokey and they planted palm trees there because they're able to live there. Okay, but that doesn't mean they planted them in San Francisco in the future. Mr. Miles says, sorry to tell you, San Fran already has palm trees. Does it have palm trees lining streets? I mean, I have not seen it. If they do, I've been to San Francisco. Tiki says there are palm trees in San Francisco. Really? Maybe I'm wrong. Tiki of Doom says there are palm trees in Northern California. Huh. Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. I don't ever remember seeing palm trees outside of Starfleet headquarters ever before, but and I would doubt they're native to San Francisco, but it's possible. That does not look like a San Francisco scene to me. We'll see. We'll see in just a few days. Okay, and somebody messaged me. Oh, okay. Well, Mr. Miles sent me a picture of a street lined with palm trees over not the Golden Gate Bridge, the other bridge. I guess I stand corrected. I guess it could be San Francisco. It doesn't look like anything we've ever seen though, for Starfleet Academy. So, okay, so here we go. So I want to talk about these characters who are going to introduce themselves. This is Rafi Musiker. She was the first officer to Admiral Picard in the Countdown comic. So she was first officer of the Verity, and she and Picard had a very close personal relationship. Not an intimate relationship, but they were close friends. So close that she would call Admiral Picard JL. Like JL was her pet name for Admiral Picard. And she'd call him that even on duty.
I play Rafi, and can I tell you?
So she's Michelle Hurd.
Not very much. She had...
Rafi Musiker is her character name.
She's got a past. With Picard.
She's got a past.
So she's from his past, and she's a genius strategist. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, a genius strategist. Well, I would have been so shocked if she wasn't a genius something. In Star Trek Picard, she's also the Federation expert on Romulans and Romulan culture. So she's now picked up another genius. She was the top expert in Romulans and Romulan culture. And now she's also a master strategist. How shocking. Okay, so this guy is the captain of the new, it's not a Federation ship. It's his own ship.
And she's a little, maybe haunted by demons.
I'm Santiago. I play Chris Rios.
Chris Rios. And I can't do the rolling R in Spanish. Cristobal Rios is actually his character.
Cristobal Chris Rios. She's the only one that calls me Chris.
I love it.
That's something I have to say.
There you go.
He's ex-Starfleet.
So I was surprised to hear that this guy was indeed ex-Starfleet. So that actually is going to bring something interesting to the mix. It almost sounds like we're setting up another Marquis, but not the Marquis. In that we've got former Federation officers serving.
Has demons of his own, which is why these two kind of have a connection.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's sort of reticent to.
Yeah, he's not so eager to help Picard. Okay, so this lady is not a geneticist, is a cyberneticist. She works with the androids, and maybe she worked on the androids. And this guy is a 17-year-old Romulan who's basically an elf who carries around a sword.
I play Dr. Agnes Girardi, and I am a researcher.
Agnes Girardi. Now, she doesn't tell him much of what she is, but yeah, she is the cyberneticist. So, Dr. Agnes Girardi. I won't remember that name for a long, long time. She's just going to be the cute one.
That's all I got. That's all I'm allowed to say.
I play a young Romulan boy by the name of Elnor.
Elnor. So he is Elnor. He's going to look like an elf. He's going to have a sword. And I believe he's going to be a member of a freedom fighting organization whose name I can't remember. And I believe the connection is 7 of 9 is a member of this organization too. Now, this organization is mostly Romulans.
He's 17 years old and pretty skilled in hand-to-hand combat as well as sword fighting.
I play Daj.
So we got Daj, and I already forgot who the hell this guy is.
And she is a young woman entering the next chapter of her life, and a major event, incident of sorts happens that really changes her whole world, and she goes seeking help from Picard.
Okay, well, here's what I know about Daj. And again, some of this is from people who have seen the first 3 episodes. So I'm going to put a slight spoiler warning here because I'm going to tell you why she's special. If you don't want to know why she's special, just mute for a couple of minutes and come back. So she is special because, and again, this is what I've heard from people who've seen it, is that she has a positronic brain. No, she is a human. She's completely human, except that she has a positronic brain. That Starfleet stopped positronic brain research after the synthetic life forms rebelled and killed a bunch of people on Mars. But the cyberneticists were able to get around Starfleet's order not to do any more testing on synthetic life by apparently putting in a cybernetic brain into a human being. I don't know the ethics of it. I don't know how it happened, but she is supposedly got a positronic brain. Also, more shocking, and I'm not 100% sure I believe this, is that Daj actually dies in the first episode. But she has a twin sister, and her twin sister is on the Borg cube, which is under Romulan control, and it's her twin sister that Picard has to kind of rescue or whatever throughout the rest of the first season. So we'll see, but apparently positronic brain is what makes her special.
I play a guy called Narek, who's a Romulan, who is
Marek.
involved in some secret operation, which I can't get into right now. And yeah, that's all I can say.
So he's just a Romulan involved in something secret. He can't say anything else. And let's see.
In this little bubble of this sort of character-driven TV show with Patrick Stewart that...
Oh, okay. They were talking about what...
Solidify some of that, I think, because right now...
They were talking about like what it was like to start working on Star Trek Picard.
Generations of humans is pretty cool.
And they're all talking about...
Star Trek's been pretty embedded in pop culture.
Yeah, this
like
guy for
years.
years.
Now, you know what I mean?
Years.
It's moved forward with so many things.
Star Trek's been embedded in pop culture for years, like at least 6 or 7 years, right? Years. Okay, I know. I'm making fun of him. He plays a 17-year-old. I don't know how old he is. Maybe he's 20. Okay, so for him, years is a long time. Now, 54 years. That's 3 times as long as this guy's been alive, probably.
To be a part of that's a pretty big deal, pretty big thing.
Yeah, it is a pretty big deal.
Major Trekkies, and suddenly they're like, that's my favorite show. Yeah. And suddenly you realize this show has impacted so many people, and the fact that we get to be a part of that and continue that legacy is so special.
Yeah, I mean,
well, let's hope you do a good job of it. Let's hope you do a good job of it.
It's a sort of experience which you say yes to the job, and then it takes some time to sort of start gathering, bigger understanding of the universe itself, but also what it means to certain people.
I was always aware of Star Trek. I was not necessarily a Trekkie, although I would say I'm
not necessarily a Trekkie.
Well, now because I've been watching it and I'm part of it, but it's incredible. You just feel the love straight away. You feel
You don't have to be a Trekkie. A lot of actors weren't Trekkies when they started, but just be honest, guys. Say I wasn't a Trekkie. Don't say I wasn't necessarily a Trekkie. I have to say, after seeing
in each of our scripts,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
really deep. And it's beautiful.
after seeing this actress talk,
when I think about Star Trek, it sort of
I hated her in the comic book. I hated her in the comic book when she was saying, "Oh, JL, blah blah blah," and I'll probably hate her again if she starts calling Admiral Picard or whatever JL. But hearing her speak and talk about her character, I actually felt, I think she redeemed herself a little bit in my mind. Maybe the comic book did not treat her as well as it should have, and what little part of her we saw in the trailer, maybe it was just a bad scene. I don't know. But I'm hoping that I don't hate her as much once the show begins.
in the same world, and Star Trek was one of the shows that
there is a genuine kindness to her as she's speaking that doesn't come across in the comic book. And so this one, it was a little bit I wanted to talk about.
Old. I did not miss that.
So he was saying he didn't miss the makeup.
Yeah.
And we in 7 seasons and 4 feature films, we had explored and investigated so much, there was nothing left.
So Patrick Stewart basically just saying he thought he was done. After Nemesis, he thought he was done. He wasn't planning on ever going back. Brent Spiner says the exact same thing. Jerry Ryan says after the 7 seasons of Voyager, she thought 7 of 9's journey was complete as well. She didn't see herself ever going back, and I think was Jonathan Del Arco or something, his name. He certainly never imagined he'd be going back as you. But here they all are.
Any urge to go back to it until a year ago.
He had no urge to go back until he saw what Alex Kurtzman brought to him.
Watching her learn how to be on Earth, becoming for 7 in this new world.
Okay, so Jerry Ryan is talking about this. Brett Spiner.
Character, because as Patrick said, we weren't cheating. We had a lot of shots at it, and but I think what I missed the most was just being a part of that world. And
I
think right. This show is going to be the same thing. I think it's going to speak to people on all sorts of levels.
Yeah, he's going to
What
speak
did I
to
miss?
people on all. So
I
this is
missed
it.
The makeup trailer at 6:30.
Yeah, he misses getting the makeup on, and he says he's going to tell a joke about missing Michael Dorn.
I miss making fun of Michael Dorn, who had already been there for 2 hours. But I also missed the end of the day, and I particularly think of Friday.
He looked at Brent Spiner, because that's something only he'll understand, since these other two weren't part of the Next Generation main cast.
If we wrapped just early enough, because the week always ended very late, and it always seemed to end in the captain's ready room with me and Riker and Data.
And remember, they filmed episodes, parts of episodes out of order, so even if the last scene of an episode wasn't in the ready room, they may have left the ready room scene to the end of the week to film, because it was probably one of the easier scenes to actually film. So it was probably something they could leave till the very end and be fairly confident they would get it done in whatever time they had left. So I was thinking about they didn't end, not most episodes didn't end in the ready room, but then I quickly remembered that they don't, just because they don't film TV shows in the order in which they display.
And occasionally Geordie, and occasionally Dr. Crusher. And we would go get out of everything, leave the lot, and go into the front door of Nicodell's bar.
So Nicodell's bar, if you're ever in Los Angeles and they're shooting a Star Trek series on a Friday evening. Go hang out at Nick Adele's bar. Or I guess you could hang out there anyway. Maybe you'll see some celebrities. But that was where Patrick Stewart, he misses the camaraderie. He misses having friends, I think.
Because that bar at the end of a 12 or 14-hour working day gave us comradeship, relaxation, those social times when the work hadn't begun or it was over, that I missed, and I still missed until today.
So that's what he honestly misses the most. And to be honest, I believe him. I believe him. So, let's see. Yeah, these are what real Romulans look like. That was that. It was that, and... Oh, how did this scene get here? I don't know, but we might as well play it since it was here. This is, of course, a scene from Deep Space Nine. I don't know how it got on my browser. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, I guess this is relevant to Star Trek Picard because I'm sure in Picard they're going to talk about LGBTQ issues. So remember 25 years ago, this was already airing on Star Trek, and maybe certain people who got the VHS of this episode may have played this scene over and over and over again until the VHS tape actually broke in their VCR, and they had to get a new VCR, and their mom asked, what's broken in your VCR? And I said, or they may have said, don't worry about it, it's just broke. I need a new VCR. But that's purely hypothetical. Purely hypothetical. Oh. It's great seeing two people share their love. Wow. You can tell how much they cared for each other. Anyway. So, do you guys have any questions about Star Trek Picard? I will. I've been talking about it for this long because I need to. I need to. Sister O'Prea's here in the background. You can't hear her, but that's who I'm talking to. So yeah, Miss Miles sent me an image of the palm trees on Skype. Mary says, ex-Starfleet, yes, Bird of Prey does sound like the Marquis. And there was kind of a big thing on Twitter because they released these like 10-second clips of the different different new characters. And Chris Rios' character, he smokes cigars. So he's literally smoking a cigar. He puts it in his mouth and takes puffs of the cigar in this Twitter exclusive, like, short video they released. And it had tons of people posting clips and links to the, in the TNG episode where Mark Twain, came to the future, where Data's head was back in the past, and Mark Twain came to the future Enterprise, and Mark Twain and Deanna Troi are walking down the corridor. And Mark Twain's like, I bet I can't get he wants a Cuban cigar. And Deanna Troy's like, we've given up tobacco centuries ago. And so Mark Twain's like, a man can't even get a fine hand-rolled Cuban cigar. And Troy said, well, I guess if we had to, we could probably replicate it. And he's like, it wouldn't be the same. So they were not smoking cigars, according to the Next Generation. And this was doubled down in Deep Space Nine, in Little Green Men, when Nog and Quark and Rom went back in time to Roswell and crash landed in 1947 Roswell, and they're being interrogated by U.S. Army soldiers, and they're smoking, and they blow smoke, and Quark is like, oh my God, what is that terrible stench? And Nog says, it's tobacco. And he's like, it smells vile. He's like, it is, it's poison. He's like, why are they smoking poison? He's like, they buy it in stores. And Quark is like, I'm going to like it here. So, you know, again, by Deep Space Nine, the fact that any human was smoking tobacco was a alien and foreign idea. And they tripled down in Voyager. Paris tells someone, and I forget who it was, who was talking about a cigarette or something, that humans gave up. Oh yeah, so it was an alien species that had their own version of tobacco. And Tom Paris says that our species gave up tobacco products hundreds of years ago. So it is long established in Trek canon that cigarettes and cigars simply wouldn't exist in the 24th century. But they put up this guy smoking a cigar. I guess it's just to say, hey, I'm different than everyone else you know in Star Trek. But it's the kind of thing that it doesn't bode well for the show. You know, listen, make him do something else, right? There's an intelligent person could find some way to set this guy apart other than having him smoke a cigar. But it's the kind of thing that you can tell they just don't care about. Miss Miles, so she's like Data's mother. Very possible. Though Data's mother did not have a human body. She had an android body. I mean, her arm came right off. Alexander says Daj is absolutely gorgeous. I will grant you, Daj is a very attractive woman, although I think the blonde is cuter. Cinnabon says her twin is Soji. Yes. Yes, it is. Wesley says Bird of Prey. Greetings, everyone. Tiki of Doom says Star Trek. And Frodo says Star Wrecked. Listen, we're gonna see. We're gonna see. It's possible. It's good. I mean, I'm not saying it's absolutely going to be bad. I'm going to give it an honest chance, and I will be watching it, and I will be talking about it as soon as I can. Alexander says Bird of Prey. I missed 7 of 9. Well, 7 of 9 is going to be in this, but I hear she's only in perhaps 1 or 2 episodes. She's not in any of the first 3 episodes. And she and Picard do not get along at the beginning, at least. And she's going by her human name, I believe Anakin. So she is not going to be, she's not going to be called 7 of 9. Sci-Fi said Bird of Prey broke his Kissing Dax VHS tape. Confirmed. Maybe. Richie Poole says, how very progressive of you. I know, I am. I'm a progressive guy. Jeff Franklin's Bird of Prey. Picard sucks. Discovery sucks. JJ Verse sucks. I suck. Well, Jeff, 3 of those I would agree with. Perhaps 2 I would agree with. 1 yet remains to be seen. And the 4th one is really up to you. I don't really have control over that. But you do, man. You do. I don't believe. I mean, listen, if you say you do, we'll see. Mr. Miles says Bird of Prey. Maybe the cigar smoker is a future hipster. I think he's a current hipster. Isn't Anakin? No, Jesus. Annika. Okay, well, whatever. 7 of 9's real name. Wrong franchise. I get it. Yeah, okay. Wrong franchise. I get it. She's using her human name. Okay? She's using her human name. So if you guys don't have any other questions, I think we're going to end it here. It is 8 o'clock, just about, p.m. Eastern. there is a small chance I will begin streaming again at approximately 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Annika. Because I will going to try to watch on HBO tonight premieres Avenue 5, which is the Hugh Laurie comedy about a cruise ship in space. So I'm going to try to watch that, and after it's over, if it's very good or very bad, I'm going to go live to talk about it. So that will be 10:30 p.m. Eastern or thereabouts. Take care all. Good night and Qapla.